Greetings. Good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Welcome to another weekly Lunch and Learn.
In terms of business, if you have a dream, go for it. Pursue it. Work hard at it, because with anything that you want to do, it's gonna come hard work. You know, if you don't put the hard work, if you don't put the time into it, it's not gonna flourish the way you want to.
Maybe advice for anybody who's looking to start a business, like just do it. Start off small and then kind of expand. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming, but like once you're in it, you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this long time ago?
Love you. Tell yourself, I love me too. I love you, Omena. Love you. When you open your heart and your mind, you're opening up to your blessing.
Yeah.
Greetings, and good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Welcome for another edition of our weekly Lunch and Learn. Today we have Harold Miller with us, and he is here to talk to us about racial justice being on the ballot. What do we need to know before we vote on November 8th? Let's welcome Harold up to the stage. Hey, Harold, how are you today?
Good, Jamie. How are you today?
I'm really good and super excited to have you. I know it's a lot going on out there in the world, got elections coming up, and we need to know, we need the information. So I know that you have a presentation style, so I'm going to actually pass the stage off to you, and then I'll return at the end to read any questions that may be in the comment section from the guest and any questions that I may have as well. All right?
Sounds good.
Anything else you want to share that comes off of your heart, soul, and spirit?
I'm ready to go.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Harold Miller. I am the Executive Director for the Racial Justice Commission. I'll go by he, him pronouns. And I'm very thankful to be here today. Thank you to the Juneteenth family. This Lunch and Learn series is like a critical piece of us as a community. And, you know, when you translate unity, emoja, it turns into unity. And so part of it is learning from each other and learning what we all are doing. And so this platform has been a great opportunity to achieve that. And so I'm just more than honored to participate in this this week. So as the host said, that racial justice proposals are on the ballot in November. And there has been a lot of talk about racial equity for a long time in this country and in the city in the aftermath of what happened with George Floyd and other racial injustices that we have seen around the country. And so that's what prompted the city of New York back in 2021 to establish what's called a Charter Revision Commission. And the Charter Revision Commission is a commission that was formed by the mayor, and in this case, it was formed by former Mayor Bill de Blasio. And its charge in this particular commission was to seize the transformative potential to identify proposed structural changes and policy reforms that would advance racial equity and begin to dismantle structural racism. And the key word is to begin. I never want to make any illusions that we're going to solve racism with a commission or with ballot questions. It takes work. We're part of a struggle, a part of a movement that's been ongoing for generations. And this is another building block of that work. And so the commission got to work right away back in March of 2021. We have 11 commissioners that were appointed. Our chair is Jennifer Jones Austin from the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies. Our vice chair, Henry Garrido, who's executive director of DC 37. And we have 9 other great civic leaders that are participating as commissioners with this Charter Revision Commission. And just to be clear, the charter revision process is one that looks at the city's constitution, which is called the charter, and able to recommend proposals to be voted on by the public, by you, that will go into law. So there's times where you have the legislative, where your city council are able to vote in laws, and this is another entry point where you are able to decide what laws go on the books. And so that's why this commission is very special and rare. And that's why this particular charge has not been done before, where we're looking at racial equity specifically. And so they got to work. Starting in March, start meeting with people around the city, in different communities, held different input sessions, worked with subject expert folks to get a sense of, what are the ways that the city can actually achieve greater equity. And so after talking to thousands and thousands of people and receiving thousands and thousands of input from New Yorkers like yourself, they came up with 3 ballot measures that you will see on November's ballot. And so the first one you will see is a question that call for to add a statement of value. So we'll go to the next slide. So I'm going to add a statement of values to guide government. So that proposal will amend the city charter to add what's called a preamble, an introductory statement of values, a vision, aspiring towards a just and equitable city for all New Yorkers. Right now, we don't have a preamble. Some constitutions do. Our U.S. Constitution does. It's a statement that kind of sets the tone of what kind of government we want to be. And so, if passed, this preamble would talk about, a city that is more equitable, a city that is that everyone can see themselves and be able to thrive and live and have opportunity, access, and power for. And so it talks about the past harms that discrimination, marginalization, racism has harmed communities of color. And that acknowledgement begins that healing process that begins for us to look forward as a city of ways how we can actually reimagine our structures, our foundations, institutions, laws, and be able to be a city that is equitable for all New Yorkers. And so, if passed, that statement will be added into our city's constitution, and that will be the thing that policymakers and lawmakers and all New Yorkers can look to as like what kind of city we are moving towards, what kind of city we want to be. So that's question 1. That's our aspirational question. When we go to question 2, that is our action question. This question talks about the establishment of a racial equity office, the creation of racial equity plans, and the establishment of a commission on racial equity. So this proposal will amend the city charter to require citywide and agency-specific racial equity plans to be formed every 2 years. So what does that mean? So every city agency will have to consider race in what ideas and plans and policies that they want to move forward. So whether that be sanitation, whether it be the Department of Environmental Protection, whether it be the Department of Finance, all agencies under the city of New York will be required to come up with racial equity plans, what they will do to actually close the gap of inequities and be able to move our city forward. And so those plans will be reviewed, will be made every 2 years, and then we'll have a review process and implementation. And then after the 2 years, we'll do an evaluation and look to what we could do moving forward as far as new plans, whether we revise what's currently there or the agency will create new plans. Those plans will be under the leadership of the Office for Racial Equity. Their charge will be to actually look at and advance racial equity and coordinate with the city to make sure this planning process is successful. Work with city agencies on a day-to-day basis to make sure that service delivery programs are getting to the people and communities in the most accessible way possible, and that racial equity will always be a priority when decisions are made. Those things are held together by with the accountability factor of an establishment of a commission on racial equity. Will be appointed by elected officials such as the mayor, members of the city council, the public advocate, controller. It'll be made up of New Yorkers like you. It'll be made up of New Yorkers, represent communities that have experienced past harms, and it'll come from a diverse range of communities. If passed, we want folks who were formerly incarcerated. We want those who are young people. We want those who are seniors, young parents that normally don't get out to meetings. A lot of times, our commissions are made up of people who are on other commissions. And so, the idea behind that is to break the mold and have New Yorkers who normally are not participating in government to be an active voice, an active participant in that. And that um, their work will be able to look at racial equity plans from the agencies, give guidance, give comments, give advice on direction they need to go in, as well as working with the city on a regular basis to be an accountability tool to make sure that they're holding true to the values of what this mandate calls for if it's passed. And so that will be made up of a 15-member panel, and if passed, you'll have a commission on racial equity. So question 3 is our accountability question. That calls for the measure of the true cost of living standard. This will require a true cost of living measure to track the actual costs in New York City. Right now, we don't actually have a true measurement of what it costs to live here in New York. We all know it's expensive. We all know it's difficult to live in, but we don't actually have a dollar amount that actually can give policymakers, those who develop programs, an opportunity to build programs and policies to make sure that those who fall well behind that dollar amount are able to live with dignity. This measure is not about a measure of poverty. This is a measure of dignity. And so it takes in consideration housing needs, food, childcare, transportation, toiletries, all the things that we need to live in New York City with real dignity. And so that measurement will give clear indications where we are on a racial when it comes to racial equity. Right now, we can all make the assumption that those BIPOC New Yorkers of color, are well behind our white counterparts in most economic measures. And so the true cost of living measure will be that tool to look at, where the gaps are and what the city can do to close that gap for New Yorkers who are behind that. So if passed, you will have a true cost of living measure established here in the city. So our campaign is built on educating New Yorkers. I'm not here to tell you how to vote on these ballot measures, but what I can say is that the intent of the commission is to actually set forth a path where a city can move forward and be a city that's more equitable for all New Yorkers. But now it's up to you to decide. It's up to you to decide what direction we go in. And so our campaign is to educate the 5.5 million registered New Yorkers to go out and vote on November 8th. Early voting starts on October 29th. Election day itself is on November 8th. And how can you support? We'll talk more about that during the hour, but just key things. Whether you support or not support these ballot measures, we want you to share this information, share the intent, share why the commission put forth these ballot measures with your friends, with your neighbors, with your family members. Educate your community, help spread the word. Make sure you bring folks to the polls when you go and vote yourself this fall. And so it's important that we actually hear from New Yorkers. We want to make sure that there's real interest, real dialogue, and engagement of ideas about these ballot measures, and so people can make an informed decision when they go vote. And so we're doing our part. You're going to see ads on TV. We're doing TV, radio, other platform interviews. We are engaging, with community partners across the city to do outreach work. We're gonna have, text bank, phone bank, all those things to make sure that New Yorkers are going to vote. But it really is up to you. I need you to help spread that word today and make sure that people know that racial equity questions are on the ballot. And so we're in this space now where we can move towards a greater society that where everyone has access, opportunity, and power. It is up to you whether or not these questions help us get there. So, to learn more, to get involved, you can always feel free to reach out to us. You can go on our website, nyc.gov/racial justice. That's nyc.gov/racial justice. Or you can email us at racialjustice@charter.nyc.gov. Obviously, you can follow us on our social media platforms at Racial Justice on Twitter, or I'm sorry, at Racial Justice NY on Twitter, at Racial Justice NYC on our Instagram and Facebook accounts. Um, Feel free to look at our YouTube channel. We have past meetings. We have other, our public input sessions. You can see our evolution, our conversations, how we got to these ballot questions by watching a lot of the past videos on our YouTube channel and get a good sense of like what how our conversations were when we talked to members of the public, when we talked to subject expert folks. And so that is important for us to learn about what these where these questions came from. So that's where I'm here today. I'm happy to take questions. Happy to dive into a little bit more of the why with folks on today. I'm always excited to talk about these ballot measures, not because I'm the executive director for this particular commission, but I've been doing the work for over 20 years around fighting for access, opportunity, and power for all New Yorkers, especially New Yorkers of color. My background is a community organizer, and I never forget, being in the streets of East New York, knocking on doors, talking to the community about poor housing conditions, schools that were underfunded, a healthcare system that didn't take into account Black maternal health. That's what keeps motivating me every day to do this work, and that's why I'm like so excited about this opportunity to have racial equity as a in the discussion in city government. So so happy to take some questions, dive in more on the ballot measures. So I see Jamie is back.
I am back. I am back. Hey, so I definitely have some questions, and you actually just kind of answered the first question for me. Was the why? Why does Harold Miller do what he does? So that way our guests could kind of connect with you and know that you're not just here because it's a job. It's actually a passion of yours, and you believe in it. I know for me that's important for me to take someone's opinion when it comes to politics. I have to understand if I relate to you from that emotion space or that heartfelt space or my spirit based space, then it'll definitely have me way more invested in what it is that you have to say and share with me than if I just think you're kind of like a talking, just a talking head for for the NYC. But you answered that. So thank you.
Yeah. And I'll expand, and sometimes I could sound like a talking head, but that's the thing is that this is a unique opportunity we're faced with in the city, and not swaying folks to vote yes or no, but the fact that we're actually having a conversation around racial equity, that's actually pretty significant in itself. A lot of times government tries not to talk about race because they know they're racist to begin with. They know that structures have been disproportionately affecting Black and brown and other people of color for generations. It's by design. And so the move was always then, okay, let's go race neutral. But race neutral actually means white still.
Yeah,
It means,
is to really ignore it and to really
yeah,
act like it's not the elephant in the room.
right.
Yeah.
And so the uniqueness about this conversation, whether, you know, these questions are all passed or some of them pass, is that New Yorkers will be able to have a serious conversation around racial equity, and like what can the city do to further that. And my larger intent is that moving forward, that we can actually use this as a catalyst to actually make structural changes in our city, that people that look like us are able to actually achieve what we want in the city, able to build wealth, able to raise our families with dignity, able to move move without fear, and that, and I don't mean fear from like getting pickpocketed or whatever. It's this that tension that's in your neck and your back when you're in a space that is, that you're not welcome, that you're not seen, you don't see yourself in, because it was structured that way. The intent is for us to, let's move into that space and start to dismantle that and dismantle, the barriers that were designed to keep us from achieving our full potential. Um, how do we continue to break that down and be able to actually achieve our full potential?
Overstood. So we do have a question from a guest member in the audience. So Twiz the RL asked, how much influence will this position have over the mayor?
Just to clarify the position, like if these ballot measures pass.
That's
Um,
that's what I think I understand it that way.
okay. Well, I will say this: when these, if passed, it'll be on the mayor of the city of New York to implement these ballot measures. Um, there there are different aspects to it. If you look at question one, for example, that'll immediately go into the charter statement of values. That's something that within government, folks outside of government can look to and say, this is the city we need to move in. This is the city that is about equity, is about having justice for all New Yorkers. So not much it will change there in terms of like what the mayor does, but what it does do, it 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 puts them, and I'm not singling out the current mayor or former mayors, but a mayor period, because the intent is of the charter measures that it will live beyond us. These laws that we live under, a lot of it was established way before we were thought of. And so the intent being in the charter that it's not about one particular mayor or one particular administration, but what is the sustainable impact it will have on the city moving forward. And so future mayors, current mayors, future mayors will have to answer the question whether or not the decisions they're making are in line with the values that New Yorkers agreed upon.
So what I kind of hear is like, so for instance, so I hear a few things. I hear that it's a beginning to start planting seeds. Like in order to ever change anything, it has to start somewhere. That's
Yes.
even within ourselves. You have to start it. So even if it's that small measure every day or that small thing every
Mm.
week, every month, you start to change and shift things. So
Right.
that's up for me. The other thing that comes up for me is question that comes up for me is, in building on that question from Twiz. So if they're passed, right? And that's the other thing that I heard. I heard that it gives a mayor something to look forward, like to lean into or to live up to. So in other
Yes.
words, something like stop and frisk. I no longer live in New York right now, but I'm from there and only just left last year. So was there while it got set up, watched it be dismantled, watched the defending of it, or the
Hmm.
reasons why. So if something like that was in place, the statement that you mentioned, if that was in place, something like stop and frisk might not have happened.
Well, that's a good example of that, because then you like, is it holding to the values
Yeah.
that New Yorkers And some may argue yes, some may argue no. But that's actually a real question that needs to be answered. That New Yorkers will hold elected officials accountable for. It's like that's not in our values to indiscriminately stop people on the street, or that it's not in our values to, have folks not have access to food or shelter, or whatever the situation is, or be subjugated to trash on the street. That is not in our values. That is not in our values to not make sure that Black women are not able to move up into executive level positions in city government. There are decisions that are constantly made every day, and a statement of values holds all of us, holds a mirror to us, and like, are you following that? Are you following the um that guidance of like making sure that all New Yorkers have access, have the ability to live a life of being able to pursue their dreams, be able to live with health and education and everything that we're entitled to as New Yorkers. And so yeah, it brings up a real question um, to those who make the laws, who enforce the law.
So another question that came to me, the question that actually came to me is, okay, so say now these measures are passed.
Mhm.
Now we're on the other side. Is there someone, or is there a group? Will it be your group? Is there someone that the mayor will still be working on? Because it's like, okay, super cool to have the ballot, super cool for us to vote for it. But then will it just like be this thing that's just like, oh, ends up being just the value statement and then no real work being done? Like what agency will the
Uh,
mayor be charged with
a
the
great question. Yeah, it leans into question two, the establishment of a office for racial equity. And within that office, there'll be an appointment of a chief equity officer. And to the Adams administration credit, there's already a office for equity that exists. What this ballot measure does, it codifies it into law, because right now what we have can be taken away by another administration. And so what we're doing is looking forward to what a city needs to have in order to achieve greater racial equity. So there will be a chief equity officer in place. If this ballot measure passed, that will be in there for as long as there's a charter, or another charter commission will try to vote and take it out, which never happens, or rarely happens. Um, and so that's why voting on these ballot measures is important, because it will establish a person whose focus will be around equity and will be able to use that office to work with city agencies to achieve greater racial equity within their agencies. Because right now we can go agency by agency and we come out on the wrong side of all the indicators. It doesn't matter if it's policing, education, sanitation, our water, our our housing stock. Um, New Yorkers of color always are on the wrong side of any indication measure from any city agency, and so the charge of that office, if passed, will be what our agencies are doing to close that gap, be able to um, uh, um, achieve greater equity and dismantle the structures of racism of inequity that have been leading that agency for generations.
Gotcha. And what would be your response to people who may have lost their trust, their belief in the
Mhm.
overall system? Because I mean, I know, from our run some years back when we lost that presidency, and then the world just really started to take this interesting, weird shift. Um, a lot of people lost hope and
Yeah.
have kind of like, turned their backs on politics. And I know kind of just reminds me of that saying, cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Hmm.
So what would you say to the people that may have lost trust, and yeah, some words of encouragement or some words of just support and
Yeah.
morale?
That is a real thing, and that's actually one of my, to be very candid with the audience here, that's one of my biggest concerns overall is not so much, those who may not agree with the commission's recommendations or whatever. It's the apathy. It's those who lose out on, who feel like it doesn't matter, it doesn't make a difference. I'm here to say that that's what those who don't want your power want you to believe. So to break down what I mean for a second is that there are people out there that don't want a robust democracy, don't want people to actually be involved, be engaged. They celebrate the fact that you sit out and not vote because that means they retain power. They retain their status quo. They retain their structures of systemic racism. They know how hard keeping a democracy is, and they know that to frustrate you, to get you disengage is a victory for them, and that's why they do it. That's why they put voter suppression laws. That's why they um, put up distraction tactics around you know um around choice and things like things that are settled, that majority of the world knows that medical procedures are between the patient and the doctor, and politicize it for them to discourage you. That's designed. That
I'm like,
is.
even right now, I'm thinking of Sister Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman. I was
Mhm.
very new down here to Georgia, and while you heard of things, when you don't live in a place, sometimes you don't really feel that impact.
Yeah.
But now living here and seeing and really hearing and seeing those trials and watching what was done to their lives for being a stand for, of course they don't want us to stand. Look at what they
Right.
did to those women's lives. Like, they completely flipped their lives upside down because they
Yeah.
believed in something and wanted to have a voice and stand up. So it's so important for us to band together, because had there been more of them out and about doing that work, maybe they would not have been attacked the way they were. Um,
That's precisely it. It's by design to discourage the majority of people from organizing, from having a collective voice, because generally we all want the same things. We want to make sure that everyone has the ability to live out their full potential. But what that means, though, is that you hold those who hold so much power and wealth in this country accountable when you want to have your own potentials fulfilled, because they their power, their wealth is built on the fact that you don't achieve that,
mm,
and so they know that. The problem is we don't know that. Once we know that, then we can dismantle a lot of these structures of I'm not calling for the end of capitalism on this call. That's a different conversation, and may have to take off the banner, for. But the point is that the these things are all tied into each other. Racism, the excess of wealth and power in this country that is valued, are all tied into each other. The use of militarized force is tied into each other. That's why you see in urban neighborhoods police officers with machine guns. That's why you see there's a lack of will of of Congress to ban assault rifles. There's no reason for a non military officer to own an AR-15, and all those things are tied into one another. And when you have a militarized greed, prioritize racist structure, it benefits those few up top. And so that's and that could be very discouraging when you're fighting those monsters every day. But we have to stay focused and know that every step we take, every vote that we make, every legislation we push for has to achieve those goals of dismantling those structures, because that's how we actually live out our full potential once those structures are dismantled.
Okay. So, question for you, because we spoke about this a little bit before, but we didn't start to dive into it. So, I'm sure that a lot of our guests out there have heard of the new offer that Bank of America has going on for minorities. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what your give us your spin on that, your feedback, your thought.
Well, I don't know the specifics about Bank of America, but what I do know is that prior to me working in government, I was a community organizer for 10 years, and I'm about 10 years, almost 10 years into city government now, 9 years roughly. But in my 10 years as a community organizer, my my focus was to go after the largest banks in the country, because they are the ones that perpetrated the thing I mentioned about the excessive greed and power and using racist tactics to prevent folks from living out their full potential. And Bank of America, as a whole, has a history of doing that. If they're trying to do something that is to benefit communities of color, I applaud that. But they have to actually be honest and be real about their banking practices, and whether or not their banking practices itself, what kind of damage it's doing to communities of color around this country. Because they and other large banks historically redline our communities, gave us loans that people cannot afford, put forth structures where they just rip wealth away from our communities. And so until there's some real structural changes to the way banks interact with our communities, I don't really have a high view of banks, period, because I seen up close and personal the devastation it caused on our people, and it's continuing to this day. People of color's wealth are tend to be in their homes. They know that, they exploit it, and we lose our wealth because they're not able to pay a mortgage payment. Where your house might be worth $300,000-$400,000 and you're $10,000 behind on a mortgage, they take that property away and you're left with nothing. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. And there's not saying that people shouldn't be paying their mortgage, things like that. No, what I'm saying is that structures are in place where we are led into a trap that takes wealth away from our communities, and they sit by and profit off of that. And that's the part that has generally disgusted me over the years. And so if they're doing something to break that down and to dismantle that, I'm on board. But if they're doing things to just give out money and masquerade, it's it's that doesn't solve the real problem. And I think that's what's going back to why I do this work, because a lot of times we are faced with goodwill gestures, like it's easy to throw money at something. It's easy to give like a finite number of opportunities for businesses and things like that. But when you don't actually deal with the structures that cause the harms,
Yeah.
then
I'm
you're
like, because what comes up for me, sorry to cut you off,
no, it's okay.
up for me is this thing where it's like, so you're willing to invest in me getting a house, and the way it starts out is starting out with all of these zeros, which to me kind of freaks me out a little bit, like the no zero down payment, zero clothing costs. That means that you're like your numbers are just automatically starting on the downside already.
Hmm.
Then what comes up for me is like, well, why no offer to invest in education or training or business entrepreneurship, something that's really going to free me, not something that could possibly end up binding me, because we're in a time frame that housing rates are up and mortgage rates are up, and the Fed just up interest rates
Interest
the other
rate.
day again. So it's like that really sounds like a trap to me, when the actual real empowerment comes through education, training, and giving money for our businesses, and teaching us that businesses like just doing hair or just doing certain things are not the ones that are going to sustain us long run.
Hmm.
Teaching that investing in things that are actually needed, things that that people need based things, are where being long-term financially comfortable comes from, not just from like the trends and the things that are going on right now. Because when recession hits, people are not going to be buying or doing those things.
Right. Y-
um
Yeah, and I was speaking from more of a housing perspective, but I think you bring up a good point about the investment of businesses. We tend not to get loans. We tend not to get lines of credit compared to white counterparts. We tend not to have venture capitalists invest in our ideas and whatnot. And so that is also a factor into this equation as well, because we put a lot of our money into these large commercial banks, and we get far less out of it, compared to others. So yeah, so that's actually spot on what you said. So
Yeah, I guess what made me turn from the housing angle was because you said that it's sort of like, if, as long as it's not smoke and mirrors and not something that's like just this thing. And that, to me, that's kind of what makes it come across as that,
mm,
is the fact that it's in an area of life that can also still end up helping me, but dragging me down eventually. Not something that's really going to give me the equity that I really need, which the equity that I need is opportunity, education, and support for businesses.
mhm. Yeah, real support and real opportunity, real access. And I guess I'll argue that until the structures that guide lending practices to our communities are broken and redefined and made fair for us, then we will constantly um,
I love
be in this trap, of like being in debt to the banks. And, when it's our wealth, is money that you work for, you invest in. But for some reason, we owe them, it's like
it.
this equation,
So, so
doesn't
what I
quite
hear
add up.
at the end of almost every conversation is going to come back to this racial justice, and voting for it and fighting for it, and maybe even joining the fight for it, and helping come up with the ideas and the questions and the things to actually even be put on the ballot. We do have a voice, people, and we have to use it. And people like Harold Miller are what helps us. So, Harold, before we depart today, is there anything else that you would like to share with the community, or any other, or would you like to wrap up your talking points?
Well, I just want to just kind of build off what you just said, Jamie, far as the work around racial equity doesn't end with these ballot questions. The day after voters decide the direction we're going, we got to get up and get back to and work on the next layer of racial equity. What is the next thing we need to work on? What is the next fight ahead of us? Because it's a long term war we're in. Because those who prefer status quo, prefer the way things are, will do everything they can to keep it that way. And will, talk about the unnecessariness of change. They'll talk about, well, we already come a long way. Things are better now. You had a black president, you got a black vice president. You should be good. No, that's not the case. And it's more than that. There's still a lot of pain. There's still a lot of suffering. There's still a question about reconciling the harms of slavery had done unto our people, that never had been addressed. Um, what is the reparation of that work that our foreparents did, what that will look like. We haven't had that conversation with government yet, and so there's more work to do, after these ballot measures are passed. And so I just encourage those to continue to be active, continue to use your voice, continue to um, hold government accountable. It's one thing to work on the inside and work within a structure, and that's a choice I made after working on the outside of the structure. But I will say that when you're on the outside of the structure, you have a lot of influence of changing it and making it beneficial to you. And so use your voice, vote, organize, take action, be involved, join a community group, start your own community group, use the powers of a collective voice to make the changes that you want to see in your community. I wrote the other day that voting is a community effort, and what that means is that if you want to change your community, you have to vote as a community. You have to organize as a community. You have to engage as a community if you want your community to change. You alone are not able to necessarily do it. You play a part in it. You can have a loud voice. You can have an influence, but it really does take action amongst others. So seek those that shares your vision of what a world can look like and participate in it. Be involved, and you will see the world that you're fighting for. Once you're in a collective group.
Ashe. Thank you, Harold. Very, very, very well said. And thank you for being here today. Thank you for educating us. I am, like I said, not back in New York, so I won't be there to vote, but I will definitely be impressing.
Come
My,
on back.
they say my mom is always like abreast of what's going on, so I'm sure she is aware of what you guys are up to. But I'll make sure that she is relaying that over to my son and my brother and any others that I connect with back home.
That's what I want to hear. Voting is also a family practice, and so make sure, if no one else, make sure the family members that are of voting age, are able to go out and vote and know what they're voting on. So if you have this information today, and there's some family members that may not know about these ballot questions, take a
Share.
few minutes out and say, hey, I heard this guy Harold, he talked about these ballot measures. Here's what he said they are. Go on the website, learn more. I encourage folks to read the preamble. I didn't go into the specific text of each question. I just want you to kind of feel it, but I encourage everyone to go on our website, nyc.gov/racial justice, to actually take some time, read it, ingest it, you know, get familiar with it. If you have questions, you can email us, reach out to us, and we'll be able to give you some additional guidance. But we have a lot of materials on our website, a lot of context, a lot of content that will help inform your decision on November 8th. So with that, I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harold, and thank you to your department for doing all that you do.
Oh, greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, folks. I hope you really thoroughly enjoyed that conversation and have some takeaways. And please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Harold and his office. So, next week's guest will be Sean Linda. He will be providing financial tips about credit, real estate, and wealth mindset. And I love the fact that that is the session that is going to follow this discussion. People, this is what Juneteenth Lunch and Learns are all about, building our community, making it stronger, stronger, and stronger. See you guys next week. Thanks for being with us. Greetings. Good afternoon, Juneteenth family. Welcome to another weekly Lunch and Learn.
In terms of business, if you have a dream, go for it. Pursue it. Work hard at it, because with anything that you want to do, it's gonna come hard work. You know, if you don't put the hard work, if you don't put the time into it, it's not gonna flourish the way you want to.
Maybe advice for anybody who's looking to start a business, like, just do it. Start off small and then kind of expand. I know sometimes it can be overwhelming, but like once you're in it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this long time ago?
Love you. Tell yourself, I love me too. I love you, Amina. Love you. When you open your heart and your mind, you're opening up to your blessing.
Yeah.